Hello again, this is Mr. RG Stuff here. Now I'm just looking over this HMV 162 gramophone I picked up recently. Now there's definitely a problem with the hinge for the lid. If I move the lid, as well as making some ominous creaking noises, you can see down here that piece of metal isn't properly attached. It's moving back and forth. And basically I've tried tightening up the screws, but that hasn't worked. They don't want to budge. Now this screw here, I notice is actually poking through the back very slightly. And I did wonder whether the hinge had been off and on again on this gramophone, but it does look completely untouched really. It doesn't look like it's ever been taken to pieces or modified. And I felt around the back of my other HMV 162, and that seems to have a bump in just about the same position, so I'm guessing it's a bit of a design flaw, maybe design feature with this model of gramophone. Anyway, that would definitely need sorting out. Now it may be that I take out the motorboard first, as that will make it easier to move the gramophone around. Well, I decided to have a go at removing the motorboard, so I've taken the screws out. There's just 4 on each, well 2 on each side, there and there, and on the other side as well. Now the actual knob for removing the motorboard should go there, and I do have that, but for some reason it's disconnected. And I tried pulling up on the platter, and well, first of all, actually, take the brake off, and you can see that the motor is running. So there's 2 springs in this motor, I believe, because it should be a number 32 motor. So at least one of the springs is working. That's just another screw that was, sorry, a nut that was kicking around inside. Don't know what that's for. So I've got the camera rather precariously balanced. So both hands now free. So let's pull up the platter. And there we go. The motor's running away nicely, and that will just run down because the spring mechanism here for the brake is not actually active. So basically the brake works on the rim of the platter, and it's nothing to do with the motor. So with the platter removed, the brake has no effect. And this bit here is the auto stop mechanism, which I have on the other HMV 162, but I don't like to use because it introduces a little bit of clicking noise into the playback. So that's actually turning very freely. And there's no noise at all. And what have we got here? Did wonder whether that might actually be oil or something. Because when I say this has never been to pieces, or at least appears to have never been to pieces, it may well have been to pieces at some point in the dim and distant past. The screws, or the heads of the screws, are actually chewed up a little bit. Let's just jam that in there for a minute. There's a little bit of indication that that screw's been out at some point, but not recently, I don't think. And the amount of dirt, so I'll just pick the camera up. You see the dirt on the speed control mechanism there, and the plate on top. That suggests to me that that's not been looked at in a long time. Same with the amount of dirt on that. If it had been touched recently, I would have expected at least a bit of a wipe and maybe a squirt of WD-40, and there's nothing. There's no indication at all that this has been to pieces recently at all. Right, so Now to try lifting out the motorboard. Now the reason I don't want the spring to wind all the way down is because there's a risk that it might unhook from the spring barrel. There's like a little stud inside that it hooks onto. If it winds all the way down, it can pop off, which is fixable, but I've never fixed that and I don't want to start now if I don't have to. Lots of gramophone needles kicking around. I'm assuming they're all used. Right. Would be much easier if there was something in there. Well, I got the motorboard out. I used a raw plug or something like a raw plug, jammed in the little hole to pull the board out. The motor looks fine. It looks like it's a Type 32 dual spring. I will have a proper look at it in a bit. It's very greasy, and in fact there's evidence of grease on the top of the horn there. This was transported on its side, certainly to get it here, and it may have been transported in all sorts of other directions in order to get it to the shop that I bought it in. There's a bit of staining on the back of the cabinet if I just redirect the light there. I don't think that's serious. It's certainly nothing from the outside that's visible. And there's some various bits of wood dust. Some of the screws came out with sort of dust or soft wood in the threads, which implies to me that there might be a slight problem with some of the bits of wood. Now I did try and remove this back panel to see if I could get the motorboard out like that, but it's most certainly connected to the horn. If I move that, I can hear the horn moving. So that may come out at some point in the future. I'll probably end up removing the tone arm to give that a clean and a service. But essentially I've got the motorboard out, which means that I can have a good look at the motor, get that running nicely, and also this gramophone will now be a lot lighter, so I can move it around to sort out the top hinge a bit better. Well, that's the motor. It is a model or a Type 32 as expected. It's cast into the frame there. It's absolutely covered in grease. It's very difficult to tell whether that's fresh grease or not. It's certainly very wet and sticky looking. It's also quite brown. Going to clean most of that off, but essentially if it's running nicely and smoothly, I may well leave it pretty much alone. I will definitely adjust the speed control, and that basically comes through here, through this mechanism here, and actually clean up the speed control on the other side. So I'm going to need to get that into my workshop to do this. Not quite sure when that's going to happen. I haven't got any room in there at the minute. Okay, well I'm going to leave it there for the moment, as I'm not quite sure when I'm going to get to clean the motor up properly. But anyway, that's it for now. Thanks for watching, and if you have enjoyed this video, please subscribe to Mr. RG Stuff.